Where are we? Who are we with?
We are in Ballarat, in Australia, far-flung corner of the world.
Yeah.
And we are Wootten.
I'm Krys, and this is Jess.
Yeah, and we're
Wootten.
Wootten. We make leather goods and bags and shoes and boots.
Your dad started all this, didn't he? Your dad he never started this, but he was a shoemaker, a traditional shoemaker, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Dad started making leather goods and footwear in the early mid-70s. So it's been about 50 years, thereabouts. Coming up to, yeah.
And you're keeping the skills alive.
Trying to. Yeah.
Doing a good job.
So how did you get into it? Did you always want to follow in Dad's footsteps?
Did I always want to... Yeah, well, yes.
What have you got on?
But
What have you got on?
as you might have noticed, we're a family business. And
Yep.
Quincey's very much involved.
What do you got on?
It's got a device as
Yeah,
well.
we've got a device on.
Yeah,
It listens to our conversations.
different colours.
We've got to listen.
So Dad, that's a really weird, it's an interesting question. Did I want to follow in Dad's footsteps? Obviously there's a terrible pun associated with that. But the thing that inspired me about my father and my mum, my parents, was just their commitment to everything that they did. And it happened that Dad was really interested and committed to learning how to make shoes. Mm-hmm. But he was also he was a craftsman, sort of in the sense of the word. He was a maker. And so Mum and Dad built our house when I was growing up. I was about Quincey's age when they were building it. So they probably started when I was 2, finished building it when I was about 5. And we lived in a caravan and a shed with no walls for that whole time. And my folks, literally dug the stone out of the hill to build the house that we lived in. So it was Dad's workshop. They were building Dad's workshop. We never actually built the house. Yeah, the house was going to come at some point, but it never did. So I think that, yeah. So the very long-winded answer to your short question is that connection to everything that we were doing, everything that they were doing, mm-hmm. and the kind of commitment to building things from the resources around you and building things of meaning was why I do what I do now.
Right.
Yeah. And it just, obviously a connection to my father was a nice thing with the tools that he used and all that sort of stuff as well. So, yeah.
When did you come on board, Krys?
Coming up to 9 years now. Yeah. So I came from a winemaking industry background.
Right.
So not leather at all. But there was an opportunity that came up basically in the business where there was a staff changeover, and Jess and I sort of discussed working together, and if that was going to be a thing, we could trial it now and just give it 6 months. And again, me not having any leather skills, it was just, let's see how this goes, because some of my skills could be translated across just into the retail side of things. And it turned out it worked well. So I kind of was thrown in the deep end in terms of leather skill, because Jess didn't really have much time to teach me, but I got thrown in the deep end, and then I was cutting out shoes and finishing shoes, and I still do that today. But we're a pretty small team, of 4 basically, and we manage the whole kit and caboodle, from customers, orders, making, production, website, bookkeeping. Yeah.
We're a small business.
Yeah. A small business. We do all of that.
Yeah.
So this must have been going 8 years when you came on board. If you came on board, yours 17 years, right?
I've been running the business for about 17 years. And so it's basically 2 things. So it's Dad's legacy, I guess, and then a business that was founded in Melbourne by 2 guys that were from a mass manufacturing background.
Right.
A large scale manufacturing background, and they founded that business, which is called Wootten Boots Australia, which is still the company name, in 1990. So it had been running in Melbourne for that, since 1990, and then I took it over in the early 2000s.
When you were 23.
And I was 23, something like that.
Wow.
So you bought the business over in 23, okay.
One had already passed on, but the other one retired.
Yeah, Peter stayed with me. Yeah, Peter and his wife stayed with me for about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so as a 23-year-old, what an idiot.
23, I can't imagine taking all this.
Yeah, it was a pretty, I mean, it was,
Baptism of fire.
yeah, baptism of fire. It was a, I think, looking back on it, incredibly naive thing to do. But I guess I'd always had a belief that, if you are passionate about what you're doing and you commit yourself to it, then it'll work out.
Yeah.
I think so. My dad passed away when I was pretty young. I was sort of 7.5 or something, and that obviously had a huge impact on me as a small human.
Yep.
And the way I kind of viewed the world ever after, and it was a pretty unique set of circumstances. I think that the place that we lived and the community that was around us and all that sort of thing at that time. And I guess I've always sort of felt like things are going to pan out.
Yeah,
As long as you dedicate yourself to them, things will work out. I mean, there was some. Don't get me wrong. There was some incredibly dark times in those early days.
When I first started dating you, he was working 6-7 days a week. Like if we got a day off together, that would be nice because I had a different job, obviously, at that stage.
Yeah.
But he was in the process of launching the new Wootten website, like launching the business as this new, more contemporary offering. So it was like a time of big changes, big risk.
Expenditure,
and sort of going into the valley of death, and
we had this.
There was a point. It was probably within the first 36 months of dating where you're like, I don't know if I can afford to keep doing this. So we were just in discussion with my family, like you just might not be a shoemaker, and then we're like, what? You can do lots of other things. So it was pretty harrowing when I first got together with you.
Yeah. I mean,
Not that it turned around like that either.
It didn't.
Yeah.
And it
We say that
still
it
hasn't.
changed when I joined the business.
Yeah.
Overnight. So it just became profitable.
What was the thing that really? Oh, it was Krys. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, it adds up. Timelines align. Perfect. I mean, I think anybody who starts a small business, I mean, you can't go in with all of the knowledge, can you?
No.
And so you're always learning on the fly. But I think, I guess there's levels of complexity to things, and where I first started in shoemaking was probably as complex as it could possibly be. And we were making bespoke orthopedic footwear for people that could potentially lose a limb if I did my job incorrectly, or in fact lose their life. The stakes were pretty high. One of our customers that wasn't our customer at the time went to another person, and the shoe was made incorrectly, and anyway, he's no longer with us. It's pretty amazing.
Really?
Yeah. So, as a 24-year-old, 25-year-old, whatever it was, over that period, like the first sort of 10 years, it's like, wow, I'm like, this is shit's getting real here.
Yeah.
The stakes are pretty high here, and what you come out with in the end, as a orthopedic, I'm a designer, and a maker, and I do like an aesthetic, thing. What you come out with at the end of an orthopedic shoe is kind of like a black leather tissue box that kind of fits on someone's foot. So it's not, like the outcome's not like, ooh, that's a nice shoe.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's like, that functions really well.
Yeah.
So anyway, that I would highly recommend that no one takes that path if you're interested in shoemaking. Yeah. But what it has given me and us, I guess, as a business, is an amazing grounding in how feet work and what fitting should be.
Right, yeah, the actual technical aspect of it. You can now make the aesthetic thing, but you have real technical aspect.
Complex side.
Yeah, and the first time I made a pair of shoes that wasn't orthopedic, someone came in, bought a pair of dress shoes, and then we went through fittings along the way, and then they came in to pick them up at the end, and put them on, and I was like, oh, there's a couple of mil kind of, I just liked it, and they're like, these are amazing, fantastic, here's my money, see you later, and I'm sort of standing there thinking, wait a minute, they're not totally immaculately perfect. Oh, well, that's what people expect. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much easier is this? We should do this.
We should do this instead.
Yeah, totally. So it's I think it's both been a really amazing learning experience, and also it was harrowing, and it's also we have to continue to kind of check ourselves as we go through this kind of. We're trying to grow the business in a way that's sustainable and make it so that we can train people because orthopedic footwear stacks really high.
Yeah.
Skill sets are insanely long to learn and all this sort of stuff, and so it's impossible to scale. And so, but we always, it's the thing that holds us back always. It's like, we just need to get the fit perfect. It's like, well, actually, most people don't need the fit to be,
Well, especially with a leather boot, right? The leather
gonna
boot,
wear.
when it's brand new versus
Yeah.
a week in versus a year in,
Yeah.
they become a perfect fit. They don't have to be out the box a perfect fit.
Exactly. Whereas, with orthopedic footwear, if you get a blister, it may not ever heal.
Yeah, okay.
So it's got to be a perfect fit. Yeah.
So you took after your dad in some respects, but your dad wasn't around to train you, right?
No.
So how does that come about?
Yeah. How did training happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I literally grew up in Dad's workshop, spent a lot of time watching him, but it's like through osmosis, I suppose, not formally. And then I went and studied industrial design after high school. Got a real job designing cars and things, or parts, being in the design team, designing cars at G&H, and that's General Motors for everyone that's not from Australia. And hated it. So
I love how everyone says it's a real job.
yeah.
As if this isn't a real job.
Yeah, got a real job in inverted commas. Well, I guess I'd seen my parents. So Dad was first and foremost a craftsperson, and he was really not that interested in the business side of things. And they lived, we all lived in a certain way because of that, right? And it was great. But I guess I thought to myself, I don't know if I can have a family. I'm going to have a hard time finding somebody who's interested in living like that. So I thought I probably would have to have a proper job. So anyway, didn't do that. Gave that the flick after about 2 years, and then enrolled in a course at RMIT. So that's a training facility in Melbourne. Did about 6 months of that, and then the business that I bought came up for sale. And so it was sort of, there is really no industry in Australia in footwear. There's it's pretty funny that...
job at the factory, like RMs or something.
Oh, potentially, yeah. I could move to South Australia and press buttons for a living.
Wales was a factory at the time, probably.
Yeah.
There weren't many options.
There weren't many
It's not
options
like
to
you
learn.
finish and you go to this place in Victoria to...
Yeah.
Every state didn't have a fee in the facility, so...
Totally. And it's pretty funny that you guys have travelled halfway around the world to sit in a shoe factory for the first time.
Yeah.
When there's...
There's not a lot of them. There really is not a lot of them, is there?
No, there's not. There's not many. And I mean, Australia especially, there's really very few. We've got a tiny population, so why would there be? And we're a long way from, everyone.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
so far away from everywhere.
Yeah. And then we're further away again because we're in Ballarat.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was basically, the choice was buy something or start something from scratch, and it just seemed like a good idea at the time to take over something that was on the decline and try and
Not everyone
resurrect
would
it.
have done that either. Someone, a lot of people would have just moseyed on with whatever they were doing, or try to start their own thing, taking on someone else's customers.
Oh yeah.
That, existing base or philosophy is, so then that was your, journey to then change it over the next
10
5
years.
years.
Yeah. It's been like a really slow, it's been like turning the Titanic, really.
Right.
Yeah. And it's literally probably been, we're still making orthopedic footwear for some of our existing customers because we're very unlikely to just, we're not going to just say to them, sorry, go find someone else. Oh, there isn't anyone else. Right.
Right, okay.
Yeah, cool.
But not taking on new orthopedic stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Whilst we can we still have the time, because we've got all their work, so we've got the patterns and the last. So while we've got that information and nothing's changing dramatically, we can still do that work. It does take still quite a bit of his time. But that's, we kind of consider some of that sort of our charity work is us doing that still for people, because it's not necessarily beneficial to the business, but it's beneficial to them. So that's a way we sort of look at it.
Fundamentally, nothing that we do here is really good for the business, let's be honest.
If
we wanted to make money, we'd be doing something entirely different. And so it's just it's a sliding scale of how much of ourselves do we want to give away to any particular job, I guess, isn't it? You know.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? Someone asked us a while back, is this a business for profit or is it a lifestyle business?
Yeah.
I was like, make no mistake, it's absolutely a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's for profit. Like, we are not registered as a not-for-profit. We're not registered as a charity. Nothing like that. This business needs to make profit to exist, as does yours.
Yeah.
But we didn't do it to maximise profit. Like, nobody prints a magazine to maximise profit. Nobody hand makes boots to maximise profit, right?
No.
That's not what you do.
For the love for what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's fundamentally the philosophy that I was, even my eyes were opened to by my parents, you know, was that there's an easy way to do things, there's a fast way to do things, and then there's a really meaningful way to do things. And that meaningful way, I guess, is different for everybody. You know? So you've got to choose, you've got to identify what that is, you know, what really makes you tick and pursue that, right? And so I guess I've spent my entire life foregoing or choosing to, you know, to not take the most financially rewarding path, but to learn the skill or to have that experience or to, you know, build a relationship or whatever it might be. The things that I find to be meaningful. And so consequently that means that you don't necessarily, you know, succeed in the kind of traditional sense of the capitalist world.
Yeah.
You know, but gee, you know, life's a lot richer because of it, right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, look at it. You guys get to work together.
Yeah.
Little Quincy was
Bombing around
She
the
was in
joint.
the start of the.
Yeah.
She was up there running ads with me. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. You know, there's something about that, and
Oh yeah.
especially when you look at people that work a normal job.
Yeah.
Real job.
The amount of hours you've had with Quince between her being born and now versus the amount of time they'll have with their kids until they come out of school is
Chalk and
probably
cheese.
amassed more time now.
And there was
Yeah.
a conversation
And it's so
when she
important.
was young, because she's our first kid, being like, oh, do we have to put her in
Daycare.
daycare or do I have to work less or whatever it is? And we're like, well, you know, I think we can. It was just about readjusting our expectations of work that we're our output that we're gonna achieve, because we'll achieve less. But you know, I look at videos of, you know, she's a baby and she's on the workbench learning how to roll, and there's three of us being like, come on, Quincy, you can do that. That's pretty sweet that we can have her here. Like, it's very unique. I understand not everyone's going to be able to do that because it's not helpful to the business, but it also is quite enriching in the same way. You know?
I think it's enriching for everybody. We always refer to her as kind of the community baby, right? Because there's other businesses in this complex that we're in, and she just kind of cruises around, says hello to people. You know, she's
very good with strangers and adults and stuff, just because that's what she's been used to
been
her
used to,
entire
yeah.
life, which
She sees lots on their faces.
is good.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, I guess I had that experience with my parents,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
it got cut short, unfortunately, you know, and I it, you know, just seemed to me to be so valuable, you know, to just have that experience and that kind of insight, I guess, into how everything comes to be.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
You don't just go to the shop and buy a thing. You know, it's made by somebody somewhere. You know, and so I can't imagine it. I can't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah.
And I mean, even just financially, I guess there's a pros and cons. Obviously, having a child with you at work means that you are less productive. But in Australia, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world. If you want to not have your child at work, either don't have a child or have parents, you know, grandparents that can look after your child for you all the time. But daycare's insanely expensive.
Oh, yeah, it's back.
I believe it is back home, yeah.
Yeah. So, what is that a good choice? You know, even from if you look, I mean, I very rarely look at things from a financial perspective, but looking at things from a financial perspective, if we were to put Quincey into daycare, then I'd probably just have to work a whole heap more in order to pay for her to go there, and then I wouldn't have any time to spend with my kid. You know.
Yeah.
That's all of that seems to me to be a bit silly. You know.
It's a bit mad. It is a bit mad.
It's a bit mad.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this is, let's be honest, to anybody that from corporate 9 to 5 that stumbles across our podcast will realise that it's all a bit mad.
Yeah.
But it's what we choose
everything's
to do,
mad.
right?
But I just, it's about the metric.
Yeah.
You know, like how do you measure?
Well, it's about your metric. Like,
Yeah.
what is choose your metric.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how do you view the world? It's fundamentally, how do you view the world?
Yeah.
You know, what is it that you want to do with your life?
Yeah.
You know, and if it's amassing fortune in the sense of, you know, having a giant bank balance, then sure, don't be a maker. What the hell are you going to do with all that money? You know, like,
You're going to buy things from makers?
you're going to,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
yeah, you're
Buy boots from makers.
You're going
and-
to buy things that make you feel like your life's full of meaning, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's sort of like, why don't you just make your life full of meaning? Then you
Yeah.
don't have to, you know, you're not spending 60 hours a week turning up to a thing you don't really love.
Some people might really love it too.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is
rewarding.
totally. I guess that's my point is that this particular thing, making shoes for people, is not for everybody, and being a maker isn't for everybody. But find the thing that is for you and just do it.
And do that thing.
Yeah. And forget about all the other stuff, you
Yeah.
know?
And all the other opinions.
Totally. Yeah.
And all the other opinions. That's the important bit. So how many people would sit later in life thinking, God, I wish I went and learned how to do that, but I didn't because that person that I'm no longer in contact with nor care about told me not to.
Yeah.
That's
Or
a
they'd taken
weird
on
thing,
mortgage
right?
And they physically couldn't, take that 3 years to
Yeah.
train themselves up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a guy I did winemaking studies with who he was like the mature age student. He was in his 40s with 3 kids. And it was a huge undertaking for him to go back and do an undergrad. And I was 18, just finished high school. And I'm there with this guy. And, his family was just moving around with him wherever it was that he had to go for study, for thing. And it totally wasn't going to be easy for them. Now he's a winemaker somewhere. But, huge undertaking with a few kids to be flexible where you move, some people can do it and some people are probably too freaked out by how hard that would be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the more you kind of, the further down the road you get in the, capitalist society, in the normal structure of things, the harder it is to remove yourself from it because you've got commitments, obviously. So
So do you think it's easier to do it from the start? Because there's two schools of thought, isn't there? There's do the job, do the thing to set yourself up financially so you can do that later, or just get on and do the thing before you have any.
well, and the other thing
risks,
too is
yeah.
considering, is the thing you enjoy doing, is that actually like you enjoy doing because it's a hobby?
yeah,
Or like once you actually have to start making money and then paying for things, do you destroy all the joy out of that? And then you
Yeah.
should only be doing that as a hobby. So
That's
earn
a
enough money
huge
so
thing.
you can do
That's a
that
huge
for
thing.
fun.
totally.
And recognising that's also a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, some people, totally. Not everyone will have the fortitude and, the stoicism, I guess, to push through.
Yeah.
It's bloody hard work,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And I mean, we're not out of the woods, I've been doing this for 17 years and it's still every day you think, oh, gee, I wonder if we're going to be busy enough in 6 months' time.
Because it can change like that.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't
And,
predict.
no.
Like COVID, for example.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can't predict
exactly.
these things.
and there's
Or
that,
we're so chuffed when someone orders something. It's like, yay!
You still do the happy
still.
dance.
yeah, totally. Or takes interest, like you guys are having a chat with us, like it's, I don't know, you could, like why would you be interested in having a chat with us?
Because it's
I
cool.
have no idea either.
But I mean, that's like, I guess we're not, full of bravado and kind of self-worth.
But that's the majority of the maker space,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
really nice. Like everyone's pretty humble about it.
Yeah. Well, because I think most people that are really good at what they do know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And so consequently they're very critical of their own work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas, there's a whole sway of people that are kind of, popping up on Instagram and they're just like immediate rock stars because they don't know what they don't know,
Yeah.
but they think it's amazing, It's like, oh, guys,
Yep.
So,
Couldn't agree more.
so it's, I think it, we're part of the Lost Trades Fair here in Australia and there's, 180 artisans or something like that at the last fair. And most of them are just extraordinary at what they do. And most of them think that they're a bit shit,
It's amazing. I don't know why we do that to ourselves.
But
Yeah.
that is a common metric between the people that are really, really good.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like they all think they're still got a long, long way to go.
Yeah.
We sit down with many 100 of maker,
Yeah.
and the commonality with the really good ones is they're still a bit unsure.
Yeah.
There's a few of them that fully believe their own hype and can rightfully so.
Yeah.
But the sort of deciding factor for the majority of them that are really good are the ones that are like, oh, I'm just not happy with that, or I'm still not sure I know how to do that right.
Well, I think the thing that makes me feel okay about being unsure about that is that I think that if you get to that point where you're just like, yeah, I'm the guy, then that's it. That's your ceiling. You're done.
I think so.
So
I think so.
You need to constantly be looking at your work, thinking, yeah, I could do better than that, or I want to try this new technique, or I want to push myself in this direction, because then you're growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that part of the joy of being a maker, that you can turn your hand to something and give it a crack?
Yeah. It's definitely meant to be.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't imagine. Like Chris was saying earlier, one of the options could be to just go and work in a factory, and I just cannot imagine being that person that turns up to work and operates that machine every day for the next 30 years. Like, no thanks.
Operates being a fancy word for pushes the button.
Yeah, that's right.
'Cause that's the thing. Like, operating a machine in days gone by would be operating a clicker press, operating a sewing machine, there was still some skill to it.
Sure.
But like operating machines now, or I come from obviously a metalwork and engineering background. Like a machinist used to have to be a good machinist. Now it's G code and it just happens. So it's a whole different.
You lose those skills.
Yeah. And how many times have we tried to employ people in special effects and looked for guys that can machine and looked for this and looked for that, and we're like, we just can't get them.
No. So you need to be good. You need to be good with CAD.
Yeah.
Or the person that passed through the CAD file needs to be good at CAD.
Yeah. I'm that guy. I'm the guy that passes the CAD file.
And you need to know how to get the CAD file to talk to them the robot, I guess. Yeah.
That's usually a USB stick these days.
Yeah. I know, right? Yeah. So I think that's the joy of making for me, is that there was people and hands and imperfections involved, obviously, because we are not perfect. But there's also there's just an inherent connection that is brought about by that way of bringing things into the world.
Yeah,
your
hands have actually touched them and used them and the tools and
yeah. I mean, and I guess the thing is that actually, probably the cheapest way of making shoes is to make them by hand. If you have a labour force that is getting paid $0.
Yeah.
So there's third world countries they're probably making shoes in a similar manner to what we are, but they just don't have any OH&S, and everyone's getting paid no money.
Yeah, and that's a whole other discussion.
So it's just exploitation. Yeah. And so I guess because of we are now an educated society, and we've kind of engineered ourselves out of a job, which is clever, I guess.
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah. What about you, Chris? How did you get into it? Like, did you ever see yourself as doing something like this? I know you obviously came on to help Jess, but did you have any prior experience of handmade stuff? I know you were in the wine industry.
Wine, yeah, and then it moved from wine making into wine retail. I always wanted to work for a small business. Yeah.
Right.
So again, that was, I don't know where that came from specifically, but I did once try and work for a big place, and I think I spent a week in HR doing like OH&S stuff. I'm like, this is awful.
Well, your grandparents and parents are both from small businesses.
Yeah, small farming businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like, I was like, if I'm going to work for a winery, say, it's going to be a small place. So then I specifically worked at small places.
Right, so you're aware of the small business and small business culture,
As soon as I was as soon as I hit 20, I was like, I'm going to do this for a small place because there will be more meaning, more connection. I could work with a family, not with, I didn't like a hierarchy basically of, that person dictates that and you never talk to that person, whatever. I always wanted to be involved in a team. So that's, I suppose my thing was always, I've done all sorts of jobs from when I was a teenager up into my 20s, when I was then more focusing in wine. But the skill set I got from all those different places was actually quite useful, on top of the things I then learned on the job specifically that were useful to making shoes and boots. But
right.
And I did have a go at sewing because I was like, I want to be diverse. I want to, I did some baby boots and just threw them in the bin because they were.
Because I'm a soul crusher.
I was so proud of myself, but he was like, nah, that's not good enough. And I was just like, okay, well, I suppose I just have to you know, he doesn't have a filter with me.
Right.
Okay.
I don't have to be quite as diplomatic,
Yeah.
apparently.
But, you know, I should then just focus on the things I am better at. And there's the varied thing that I can do within the business
Yeah.
while still being useful. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So that was sort of a bit of like, you can't do everything, you know, like,
Yeah.
so just focus on those bits that, you know, you can hone in on and, you know, still create the efficiencies through the business.
It's hard. Like,
There's a bit of a superpower in just recognising that you
Yeah.
can't do everything.
yeah.
Like that's, we had a really interesting chat this morning with someone about exactly that. Like where, as this gets bigger, where do we concentrate our time on?
Yeah.
Like you can't do everything.
Yeah.
It'd be silly to.
Well,
But-
the thing when Jess had more staff, like when there was quite a few more staff, I think before I joined the business at one point,
Yeah.
he was just managing staff mostly. You know?
Right.
So he was,
was putting out spot
delegating
fires.
spot fires. Oh, that's been, you know, so I fixed this. And it, yeah, again, that actually wasn't efficient because there was just too many spot fires probably to put out because there was, you know, someone only doing 1 day, someone doing 3 days, 2 days, and it was just, yeah, haphazard and not very well done.
It was
sort of like going from
shocking.
8 staff to 4 staff meant, yes, less working hands, but more focus and less mistakes.
Well, I guess when you're, you know, looking after so many different staff, that's your main job is just looking after those staff rather than actually
making the thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a common growth issue for every brand, but makers especially is, you know, normally I guess they're just one person. Perhaps they've got a supportive partner, or perhaps their partner works with them. But, you know, going from that to even employing one person is a big step. And then if you know, once you've got any more than 2 or 3, it's like you're the manager.
Yeah.
And most makers are not really that great at that, you know.
Managing's
There's a great-
hard
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
There's a great book, and it's not trying to solve any of those problems. It's just trying to get you to recognise. It's called the E-Myth,
Yeah.
and it's about technicians, managers, and entrepreneurs. It's like we probably all have 2, but rarely does anyone have all 3.
Yeah.
And you need to recognise which one you don't have,
Yeah.
and get that one on board.
Yeah.
So, chance to ask you the question everyone asks us. I'm going to ask Krys first, because everyone seems to ask Kate first.
Okay.
How do you work together?
Oh, right. I
Yeah.
was like, what question did they ask me?
You come
I
to
knew
work.
straight away.
It's probably similar to how we built together and how we like work in life together. We know there's a job to get done and we plod along and work together to get it done. There's a usually a common goal. Like I think I was once said to Kate, like I go to work and I don't really know what I'm doing that day until I get into work. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to do this today. But you know, like there's generally a thread of we're trying to get this through. I think I mentioned Jess is doesn't have a filter when it comes to me, so sometimes that can be a bit of a breaking point because you know he's so much more tender with the other staff.
Much less tender with me.
More difficult
Sometimes
for
I
you
also
to
need
quit.
to up the butt.
It's more
too.
difficult for you to quit. You won't leave.
But yeah, I mean, the biggest adjustment like we were super efficient and a really solid team prior to having Quincey, but she was here as a baby, and the thing was I'm constantly distracted either by a phone call, either by an email, by someone walking the door, by a baby needing to be fed or something, and or to wipe her bum, whatever. And that's kind of going to be my life for a little bit. And so it was more about Jess needed to not to get to grips, but, you know, needed to actually understand and appreciate that. And I need to understand that he needs to just work more because he has less time.
Because
So
I'm taking up
it's just
slack,
that.
yeah.
So that's why we'll normally in the week we'll probably drive in separately a few days because I'll have commitments with Quincey, but that just gives him the opportunity. Like you can work an extra hour, whatever, try and be home by dinner, you know, and that's how we can work together because then he gets the time
Yes.
to do what he needs to do, and I get the time to like keep a human alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
I heard that's
important.
quite a big job.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard that's quite a big job.
Full-time job.
Yeah, it's more than I didn't really think about it. I was like,
Don't think about it.
I don't think about things. I didn't read anything. It's like,
Best to just
this is
do
what
it.
you do.
Work it out
I
later.
feed every 3 hours. That's a big thing.
Oh dear.
had
We're
no-
gonna fit
no
that
idea.
in.
I think if you over research things, then you probably never do anything in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
So
So is it a better arrangement for you now because you get to actually be a shoemaker
Better than it was when we
when
had
you were
lots
trying
of
to do it
staff.
all? Yeah. When you were being a manager or when you were just
Oh,
mowing
yeah, no,
body.
totally.
or-
So, well, yeah, I think on your point of recognizing what you're not good at,
Yeah.
got to do that. I'm really, I can do whatever you want me to do,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm not going to make any money doing that, you know. And what I just spent a lot of time just giving my time away to people, because they'd come into the shop and they'd be like, oh, I've got this really complex thing that I need done. Can you do it? And it's like, well, yeah, I guess, you know, I can, and I do. I did, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, terrible. So having a gatekeeper. So Krys is the gatekeeper to the business, basically, and so I don't give my time away so much anymore, which is good, right? So yeah, absolutely. I think having somebody that that manages all of that sort of things, totally. You can't make things, market things, you know, be the entrepreneur, do the books, talk to the customers. Like, oh my God, you know,
Yeah.
unless you're making. I used to, yeah. Well, yeah. There was a time there. It was just me, you know, literally just me.
Sister.
Yeah, and my sister helped out a fair bit too during that time.
That's the hard bit when you're doing everything. Because
Yeah.
you don't get good at anything. You become this generalist.
Yeah.
So
And-
you're either making really good product and don't have any time to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a few Goldilocks zones where you've got big waiting lists and all that stuff, and that's great. But I have seen multiple makers get to the end of that and be like, oh wait, I've just worked through a 6-month backlog, and
I've got
Now what do I
nothing
do?
now.
now I need to do the marketing bit, because you don't have enough foresight because you're so
Yeah.
close to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard. Do you have a solid line in the sand, like you do X, you do Y?
Well, just in production, yeah. Like,
Right.
you know, I do the cutting, I do the finishing, I do the eyelets. Jess does the lasting, Jess does the soling.
Yeah.
And we all have kind of distinct zones. When we're in training, it probably is a bit more fluid and stuff. But like when we're busy, everyone's got that job they need to do, and it's quite nice like that.
I feel like I'd be like the cutting and the finishing, because I'm quite good at finishing things, you know, got the eye for
But I don't
things
come from a
really.
design background.
Yeah.
Jack's just getting it done.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have
I'm a hammer kind of guy.
I was going to say, I don't come from a design background, so sometimes I'll have an idea of, oh, we could do this, but I can kind of flesh out an idea, but I don't have the graphic design, Adobe Illustrator skills,
Right.
and then I need to get him involved, and he doesn't have the time. So then there's, you know, something that should really probably take someone an hour to do, doesn't happen for months because I can't get in
Yeah.
the way. And we only have so much time at night. Like we, you know, we've tried to do that sometimes. We'll put the kid to bed, and then we, you know, in the 1 hour we have before we want to sleep ourselves, we'll do some work stuff.
More work.
But it's
Yeah.
exhausting because we're already
Homework.
tired. We just want a cup of tea.
Do you
Yeah.
ever watch the telly?
Yeah, that's the only
Yeah.
time we do.
Yeah,
Like,
half an hour.
We
Yeah.
get like maybe half an hour to an hour. That's the only time we have.
Sometimes we go to bed at, you know,
And so the idea of doing
hours
more
later
work,
than we ought to, because we're being adults for a while, you know.
but it's exhausting, you know, to do that all the time. Because yes,
Totally.
we could do that every night. We could chip away at something, and we'd actually probably achieve lots.
Yeah.
But then we'd also be a bit sad because that's all we do. Like
I totally hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to.
when we were building, that was kind of a nice break because we had to talk about building. So it was this nice release from always talking about staff or work to be able to like, okay, let's talk about this. So I loved it because we had these two distinct lives. It was like work life, building life.
So for anyone that doesn't know, you built your own house, right?
Yeah, we built our own house over two and a bit years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to see it later.
Yeah, it was it was filmed for a TV show in Australia on the ABC, and it was super fun. But it was a massive life project that it wasn't spur of the moment. We'd been talking about it since we'd probably met. You know,
Yeah.
probably since 10 years ago we'd been talking about it. Submitted plans 8 years ago, didn't get finance and everything until 4 years ago. Built it, living in it. So it's everything for us is like a long journey.
Yeah, there's always a long lead time. But good things take time.
Yeah, and I always say to people like it was worth it, but we worked so hard and had no social life, and
Yeah.
it was the hardest thing we've done.
Yeah.
But looking back, it's just like how nice was that? That
Are
we did
they-
that we committed.
Yeah. Are they long lead times though? Or are we all just very impatient? Because things should take time.
Yeah, they should.
Like, you make boots for a living, so if anyone should understand it, it should be you.
Yeah.
Things take time for someone to
Depending on the
make.
production facility, though, we've
Yeah.
often referred to other places and they pump it out in a day.
But is that not the fallacy? That too many people are used to that side of it.
Yeah, it's like an Amazon order.
That's
versus-
exactly my point.
Instant gratification.
Yeah.
So
I've notably had more than one email less than 24 hours after someone's ordered a book asking where it is.
Or when's it going to arrive?
Yeah.
Within 24 hours.
Yeah,
Because that's
we-
Amazon's normality, right?
Yeah.
I've never ordered
It is
anything
back
from
home.
Amazon.
It's
Yeah.
24 hours back home.
We
You
have-
almost can't
we-
get anything anywhere else back home.
Yeah.
I think most people,
absolutely.
there is so much information on our website, most people who are ordering from us have a context that there is this time frame, and it could be 1 week, it could be this many weeks. They might want an indication of roughly where, and I'll give them a rough idea if I can, but otherwise it's like, I really don't know. It could be, because it depends on this guy or someone else, you know. Or if I have the stock. If I've got the stock, yeah, I can send it. But boot-wise, again, I've worked really hard to make people's expectations super low so that they think it's going to take the longest possible time. And then when I contact them 4-6 weeks early, they're supremely stoked.
Yeah.
Under promise.
Yeah.
Over-deliver.
Whereas when I started with Jess and he was still doing bespoke stuff, he'd have a quote, he'd spend an hour with someone, talk about design, they, do this thing, and he would have no probably conversation about how long it was going to take. So then they'd contact me 2 months later, 3 months later. It's like, I don't even know how long it's going to take because you haven't even told them, So then we had to really set up this thing, expectation of how much it's going to cost, how much it's going to take.
Well, it's about repeatability too. That's if every job is a completely unknown quantity, then of course, how do you give people an estimate on the never-ending ball of string, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know how long this is going to take because I've never done it before. You know?
Even the one rack of old custom customers that we work for, I think August last year was when I took the first one, and then I had to wait for that rack to build up slowly. So, I said, it could be 6 to 12 months, and they're okay with that because I understand it's a specialised thing they're getting from Jess. Whereas everyone else, we know that we can achieve that time frame, and I think we changed it last year though when we got busier after the TV show aired.
12 to you mean?
Yeah, it used to be 8 to 12 weeks, and then we changed it to 12 to 16 weeks because we needed more of a buffer because
Right.
there was just more work.
It was just an unknown. It was the unknown quantity of how many new jobs might come in the door and that sort of thing. We wanted to make sure that we had a bit of a buffer, and that was
we seem
that
to be
thing of like,
consistent with that though, because we also introduce new styles and they take time to get through.
Yeah.
So all of that you kind of need to account for. It's not necessarily always orders. There's sometimes stock and samples, R&D. That's distracting, which Jess loves doing. But
I like new things. It's fun.
Product designer in you, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a product
Well,
design guy.
I mean, in the 17 years that I've been doing this, there's probably been a dozen businesses or something, in our industry closed in Australia because they just haven't innovated at all. Like, of course, people aren't buying the same thing they were buying in 1985. It's not 1985. You got to do something different, So we are always, adding new things and developing stuff and pushing ourselves.
Like your
to-
trainers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've just done some
we talked about
sneakers.
them a year ago, I think.
Sneakers.
So it's not. It's sometimes quick for us to do the sample, but then for us to develop the
The fitting stuff.
the tools, which
Yeah.
is what people come in to try on, and so we know what the capabilities are, what's the expansive color swatches or whatever that we're going to offer. That takes time and money, and so I have to pace that in. So Jess is like, "Oh, this could be released." I'm like, "No. One thing at a time. You focus on one thing at a time."
Let's give that another 6 months.
The fitting stock's quite a difficult one, I can imagine, with being a shoemaker, bootmaker.
Yeah, it's a terrible
Because
way of trying to.
you don't just make one of and showcase that. You have X styles.
Yeah.
And I know you have in then in multiple different swatches, but they all have to be in different sizes so people can actually try them on.
The
Like, it's a
proliferation
lot
is
out
insane.
front, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we've probably got.
There's just a size range. So I say to someone, you might be trying on this red boot. What you're going to like? If you're like, "Oh, can I try that on in black?" Probably not, because I probably only have it in this whiskey, this tan, and this red color, maybe in your size range. But someone who's a size 11 might try the black one on. But the point is that you're just understanding what fit you are.
Yeah.
And then you've got to use a bit of imagination. And so that's not going to work for everyone. It seems to be less of an issue, but if people can kind of see what the finished colour is in real life or on the computer screen.
Well, it's way better than it used to be. It's way better than like me doing a drawing and saying, "Hey, this is what the shoe might look like."
When I started in the shop, there was a handful of fitting stock. So it was sort of like, if you're a 10 and a half, you'd be in luck. But if you're a 10, we didn't have something for you to try on. So
And are you every half size?
Huh?
Yeah.
Every half size.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got something like 250 pairs of shoes in the shop, you know.
Just for people to try
Just
on.
for people to
not
try
for
on. They're not for
sale.
sale.
Yeah.
And we've made every single idiots. Why would you do shoes?
But they're useful tools. So when someone does visit us, like we had someone from, where were they from? It doesn't matter, New South Wales or whatever, over the weekend, I get them to try on a whole swag of stuff. Because I say, listen, if you're thinking you might want to do a different style of boot or something down the track, at least we know what size you are in these 5 different things.
Yeah.
And so next time you can just shoot me an email or flick me a phone call and I'm like, yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Stephen.
Right.
The geography factor is a massive limit for
So some people like that idea of, you know, all their details are on file.
Yeah.
You know, they could do the same thing or they could, you know, they've got options.
Imagine starting a magazine and you could only literally hand it to your customer.
That'd be terrible.
That would be such a dumb thing to do.
Doing a magazine anyway is a dumb thing.
Yeah,
to do,
exactly.
Right?
But shoes are the same, right?
Yeah.
So you talk to anyone who's just retailing shoes, you know, the stock proliferation is insane. And then you end up, you know, you sell through certain styles and you end up with the giant ones and the tiny ones, and then you have to discount them to less than you bought them for and all that sort of stuff. You know, like
Yeah.
shoe retail, just no good. And then, you know, add the level of complexity on top of it of making them to order and all that sort of stuff. You know, like, yeah, it's just, as we said earlier, you know, there's better ways to make a living if that's what your aim is. You know, if your aim is to have a giant bank balance, do something else.
So why do you do it?
It's a good question.
It's nice material to work with. It's
I get, like, Grace and I, who works with us in the workshop and shop, we get joy out of working with customers and delivering, you know, coming up with an idea, a design, and then they pick it up and they're stoked. You know, like, that's joyful for us. And making and working with stuff. So the diversity of what we do is actually quite fun. You know,
Every day is a
having
different
crews with us
day.
at work is fun. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
just behind a computer. You know, I'm behind it for a couple of hours on a Tuesday to do the bookkeeping and then moving on, you know, other stuff. So I think the variety and the material we work with is quite nice. And yeah, we surprise ourselves with what we can make.
Yeah, well, fundamentally for me, the initial reason why I started doing this was for a connection with my dad.
Right.
I had a tool chest full of tools and a whole bunch of random weird old hand cranked situations that I thought I need to know how these work. Somebody needs to know how these work. So that was like the initial impetus to why shoes, right? I just really like making stuff, you know, and I guess as I've become, like, you know, as a 22-year-old, it's just like I just want to make cool stuff, you know. But as I've gotten older, you know, as I've kind of delved more deeply into the reasons, the actual fundamental reasons of why do we do anything? You know, it's about, one, it's obviously about keeping an industry alive that doesn't exist anymore. But, you know, yeah, I guess that anyone can do that. I'm not a martyr, so, you know, like, I'm not going to be fallen on the sword because of that. But I think we just, generally speaking, the world needs to do things differently, and that's what we're here for. You know, we are here to make the world a better place to live. You know, make meaningful connections with people, our suppliers, our raw material. You know, people that make raw material here. You know, or farmers. You know, whatever. Like anybody that's in the chain of events that bring a boot to life.
I mean, we found it fascinating when we did the tour at the weekend, like just seeing everybody like, oh, wow, and asking some really good questions. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's great.
There
that
was
they
one
come
woman
in.
on that tour that I thought her first few questions were a bit obnoxious, and by the end of it, she was asking some really meaningful questions.
Yeah.
And I was like, this works.
This is the point.
This is exactly the reason that people need to be in front of makers and
Yeah,
makers
yeah.
need to open their shops up.
Exactly.
Because there was some real...
They
And
understand.
I don't think they were rude questions. I just think they came across as obnoxious because there was just a complete misunderstanding.
Yeah.
What was the sort of question?
It was just like, it was the very like, well, why do you do it like this? Why would you not just get that? Why would you?
Yeah.
And I was like, they weren't, as I say, they weren't rude. They felt a bit obnoxious.
Yeah.
But as it went on, and it was like, one of the particular turning points was the plastic.
Yeah.
You were showing the thermoplastic and how that's in most modern boots because it speeds up manufacture.
Yeah.
But actually your feet don't get warm enough to remold that, so they'll always be that shape. The plastic in the arch of your foot, that collapses.
Yeah.
All those things, and at that point I noticed the whole change. Because people, and there was a statement you made about, you know, boots are the piece of clothing that your whole body weight's on.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
And it's a lot for people to think about.
Yeah.
Especially when people are constantly being told about bad posture or bad this or bad that. And I mean, you obviously come from an orthopedics background, but it was really nice to see those questions change to even your simple cut-throughs to like, oh wait, there's a very clear difference in that.
Yeah.
This isn't someone just saying, well, I make it by hand and it's slower, so it's better. This is someone saying, I make it by hand, which is slower, but it's better. Not it's slower, but it's better.
That's right.
It
That's
just
why it
happens
costs
to be
so
slower to make it
To
better.
make it better. Yeah. And so being an industrial designer, you know, my whole thing with this is, so I could, you know, we could do what my dad was doing. I could do it, you know, sure, we could make insanely slowly beautifully made shoes, but then it's just like we're just appealing to the upper echelon of society, and you know, like those guys have got enough choice already, and the world doesn't need more of that, you know. And so what we are trying to do is make the best thing as efficiently as we possibly can, and get it to the customer directly. So there's just so many flaws in the way that we consume things, you know, aside from the fact that it's complete, like we just offshore. Well, you know, when I say offshore, it doesn't necessarily need to be offshore, but we outsource everything. It's probably a better way to put it. Like, it's just like, it's out there. It just comes in a box, you know. There's no understanding of what went into it, actually creating it or bringing it to your door.
Yeah.
And so involving people in that part of the process, and we're not, like, you know, Chris and I are not, our whole team, we're just normal people, you know. We're just people that are really dedicated to doing what we do, and having people come in and be kind of, experience that, I guess, and it's kind of disarming, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so you can, we get that a lot, you know. People kind of, we'll communicate it as much as we could, but people come in thinking that we're going to be a certain kind of level of, you know, fashionista, or we're going to be a certain kind of level of highbrow maker, or we're going to be a certain level. We're just normal people.
Yeah.
We're
You
really
realise
interested
there's
in.
only like 2 or 3 people working in it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like
yeah.
10.
Yeah, exactly. I think our website and our history and all that sort of stuff makes it seem like it's a giant thing, and then people walking in and they're like, oh, it's just like 4 people in a room. Yeah.
And that's the reality of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think that's then on all of us as creatives to get more people in our space and show off more? Because it'd be very easy to blame the consumer for not understanding.
Sure, yeah.
So what are we all doing to make sure they understand?
I think it's really important that we communicate that. Totally. And I think it should, you know, if you're a conscientious person, if you're interested in knowing, if you're inquisitive and, you know, all that stuff, then it should make you consider all of the decisions that you make. You know, it should help to right the ship. You know, like we've been 40 years in the Western world. We've been for the last 40 years. It's just been like just churn and burn.
Yeah.
You know? Like
Consume,
more
consume.
is more,
Yeah.
and
More is better.
more is better, bigger and shinier and newer. Like, you know, everyone's got a smartphone.
Yep.
Do you get 18 months out of a smartphone? You know, I've had mine for 4 or 5 years, and it's very hard to keep one working that long.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we pay money to keep it working.
And they're proper bits of equipment. You know, like when I was a kid, we didn't have a TV, leave alone a computer. And then, you know, I think we got my first computer was probably when I was like 21 or something. Maybe not that late. Anyway, whatever. It was a long time. But no, there's more computing power in your pocket. So it's sort of this thing of like everything's immediate, everything's kind of magical and wonderful, and then when you're done with it, it's gone. And where does it go? You know, away, whatever that means. You know,
away to the away.
No,
just goes to the away,
place.
doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like the information goes to the cloud. They're the same place, right? It's just this kind of
It's just
ethereal
the away.
joy.
It's the away. It's over there.
Yeah.
It's over there
Don't worry
somewhere.
about it. Yeah.
So, what about keeping all this alive with regards to the machinery, right?
Yeah.
Because the machinery was very apparent when we were with Ben and stuff like that. Machinery is just not available.
No.
Like, how do you, 1, get your hands on it, 2, be able to do it efficient so you can do it at a price point that's available for everybody?
Yeah.
Next boots are the best example in the bootmaking world I can think of. I've not spoke to Whites, but Nick's.
Yeah.
they make them. We spoke about this earlier. Actually,
Yeah.
they make them at a price point that people can use them. Now they're a bigger operation than you, but they make them at a price point that workers can enjoy them.
Yeah.
They're a utility thing.
That's their history too.
Yeah,
That's,
exactly. But
That's
they've kept
what
to
their brand's
that.
been founded on.
Yes. Whereas, like you say, they could easily make it more expensive. But even from this size to someone like Nick's size to whatever size it is, the machinery's not really available for a lot of it.
No.
Not the old school machinery that, I mean, you showed me the insole stitching.
Yeah.
Like you don't really see them.
No, you can't. And well, unfortunately, there's no one in Australia that knows how they work either. So that has been a thing, for me to learn.
You need to be a mechanic.
Again, there's lots of hats. So
I can read the Italian.
yeah, Chris can read the Italian manual. Perfect. Decode it to me, and then I can scratch my head and work out how it works. So keeping those things running, really hardcore. Parts are maybe available from some places in Italy and the States potentially. Finding them in the first place. I mean, the upside to it, I guess, because there's no industry in Australia really, that most of those machines that would be replacement value $50,000, $70,000, $100,000. They've literally been scrap metal prices, or less than. We've been able to buy machines for a few $100.
That's scary.
Yeah.
So he's always been on the lookout, on the pulse. So he could be on, just when stuff's come up, he's like, oh, I was on Gray's Online, I was on Marketplace, I was on this, and this has come up. It's in this part of wherever. Can we go get it this weekend? So it's always just been like, we've got to be available, have the means to pick it up, hire a truck, whatever. So a lot of this stuff was just like, okay, this is our Sunday. Yeah. We're going to go pick up this machine from this guy who's retiring.
That's right.
And is it a point where you may not need that machine, but you know that machine, you may not need it now, but you might need it and it won't come up again. So you just have to bet yourself on that.
Sometimes.
Basically, yeah, a lot of that. And we've got two of most things for, insurance purposes.
Well, you have to.
As if the whole thing comes grinding to a halt.
You don't have a business.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're not available.
Yeah. And they are. I mean, you can buy machines, but they'll come from Italy. They'll be very expensive.
Yeah.
And a new machine. So we're talking insole stitches, outsole stitches. They're sort of $50,000 to $75,000. And that's a lot of money for a small business. Yeah. And so new for old replacement of all the machines that we've got in here is probably over $1 million Australian dollars. Which is pretty insane.
It'd be quite hard for someone to start up doing this anyway, like on their own, like with all the equipment.
Yeah. I mean, so you could definitely start.
Patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make the pattern. Know what last you're building your model on.
And you can't just go out there to be like a size 10 bootmaker.
Yeah, totally.
We do a really good size 10 boot.
Yeah.
Sorry, rest of the world.
Else. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so it's all, slowly chipping away all of this stuff. It's not a quick process.
No, and we've been collecting it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I just think there are guys that have started, in the last sort of 5 years, especially in the States. There's a bit more of an industry there, and they've.
I'm going to give you that one because yours are going to go and Kate and I are going to share one.
Okay, well, sure.
Get close.
There's a guy you were saying?
There's a few guys in the States, that have, all around the world, but there are a few people that have started up. That's quite sharp, by the way. Don't cut yourself. That have started up making a particular style of shoe in a particular way, and they've been able to go from zero to a very well finished shoe reasonably quickly. And you're talking sort of 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it might be. Even that's a fairly long lead time, really, when you're talking about one particular thing. But so the barrier to entry for a handmade shoe is very low, really, because you need the skill, that's time, but the machinery equipment is virtually, you don't need a lot. Like you need an awl and a knife that you're holding there, and a bit of leather and a last. Like if you're doing it the same way that Dad did it, the machinery is not really necessary.
Okay.
But it'll take you a very long time to make a shoe. You're talking a week at least for a pair. And I don't know how much you want to pay yourself a week, plus your overheads, plus your materials, you know,
Expensive
they're going to be expensive boots. Yeah. And, you know, like, so scaling that way, no good. And you're going to, you know, there are a lot of people in the world that are doing that. You know,
They make 12 pairs a year.
They make,
It's like-
yeah, exactly. They might make one pair a month or one pair a week or somewhere in between the two, you know. And I guess, you know, so our aim is to not be limited in that way. And so machinery is required for sure. And getting that machinery is hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Or expensive. Yeah. One or the other.
But on the second-hand market, it's first in, best dressed.
Yeah.
So we're lucky that he's often looking.
Well, I guess we're kind of lucky that, you know, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? The industry that, you know, since I took over the business, the industry's declined even further. It was on the, you know, it was really on the decline at that point, but it's declined even further, and so we've been able to, sort of get a few things from businesses that have closed at a very inexpensive cost. But there's been thousands of hours involved in getting them up to running properly and learning how they work.
Finding them and then servicing them and
Yeah.
Plus, you need a big space for them all because
Yeah.
they're big machines.
Yeah, and they're heavy, and we've moved them a few times, and it's no fun.
Not for one person.
No. Well, and this is the thing too. You know, like when we were building our house, we did most of the jobs in building ourselves. You know, we had a plumber involved who was awesome, and we had a couple of other tradies involved, but not many. And you know, I would often say to Chris, you know, it's pretty funny, isn't it, that, you know, a tradie turns up to work and that turns up to the work site and they've got a toolbox with half a dozen tools in it that you can get from anywhere in the world, and they're getting paid like 5 times as much as we are per hour. We chose the wrong trade. You know, it's just where we place our value, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you want to be doing this. So.
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't be doing it. Yeah, it's not. It's just an interesting observation. You know? They've got a union.
So with that in mind, do you ever think about apprentices and how you bring people on and what the lineage looks like? Other than Quincey being a bootmaker.
Yeah, she's got no choice. She's got any choice she wants
We've
to
not really
make.
talked about the end game, like, you know, when we'd retire or anything, because that's probably a long way off.
Hopefully that's a fairly long way away.
Yeah. So I suppose it's about the staff we have at hand and their skill set and how passionate they are, and, you know, because some of them have been doing it for years, and it's just about working with everyone, and finding skilled staff is always going to be hard for us, I think.
It's a long lead.
It's not a quick find either, and it's sometimes just by someone else. Like, yeah, it's difficult to explain. Like, we've done it once before where we put it out to our Instagram followers, you know, and got some, you know, some sort of like, oh, I'd love to leave my teaching job in Melbourne and come there, but, you know, that's just sort of whimsical, less skilled, I suppose.
Yeah, the difficulty is, I think, in the world that we live in today, is that everybody thinks the job that I have is the job that they see on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, and the job that I have is not the job that everyone sees on Instagram. I mean, you know,
It is
obviously, yes, we are actually making the shoes, as it turns out. But you know, you don't put the many days of hard graft that it takes to get to that point where you can take a picture of a nice shoe on Instagram, do you? You know, and the repetitive nature of things, and it's not all, you know, sunlight and flowers, is it? It is actually hard work, and so it's hard to kind of communicate that with people. So when someone comes responds to that call out and they're like, yeah, I've got a job that pays me 6 figures, but I'd much rather do something like you do. Like, well, do you really know what I do? You know, or do you just think you do? Yeah. So
does that go full circle back to getting more people in your workshop so they know that, one, it exists, and two, what it is you do?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. It definitely does, and we're working on some YouTube sort of content or whatever, some videos that'll go on YouTube that will go on wherever they go, you know, to try and talk about that as well, and show the kind of the reason why we're here and the reason why we do what we do and how we do what we do and all that sort of stuff, and just as by way of trying to communicate all of the things, you know. And I guess, I mean, fundamentally our job is to make leather goods and boots, but, you know, we should be able to, as a group of people that are committed to something and think about things, be able to turn our hand to kind of anything, really, you know. And I guess that's the way I'd like to view the maker space, you know, is that it takes a long time to hone your skills in one particular trade, but I would imagine that most makers probably are doing it for a reason other than just that particular repetitive craft. You know, like it might be that they're more interested in changing the world in a broader sense, you know?
Yeah, there's always a want in there.
Yeah.
Like whether it's a want for them to just be happier and live life on their own terms, or whether it's a want for, you know, changing the world, or whether it's whatever the grandest or the simplest is, there's always a want somewhere that is completely detached from finances.
Yeah.
You don't really...
Your lifestyle, haven't you? You've created your life here. Like,
Yeah.
you had the 9 to 5, you're having to work for somebody else, and you have to fit your life in that. But, like, it's hard some days what we do, but, like, being here and, you know, living life on our terms, it's, I think that's what makes it worth it. Like, your freedom to you is what?
Freedom to me is number one.
Is more important.
Yeah.
I've talked about rehoming our dog to be more free. Like, freedom to me is becoming obsessively number one.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything better than freedom.
Totally.
Like, I've had a job that pays really well. I've had that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've had a bunch of other problems. Just money's not been one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I've got almost no problems, but money's one of them. Right? Like that's the choice you make, right? It's quantity of problems over quality of problems.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that's the thing in my experience. You know, I was a very good student at high school. You know, pretty studious, got a pretty good result, all of that sort of stuff. And so, by any metric, after high school, I should have gone and earned money. You know, like that's the way the world works, right?
But there is a picture of you in your school's Hall of Fame, like
Yeah, totally. I'm on the wall at school
for the alumni.
Yeah,
Like, oh, Jess,
and so
the
you know,
Bootmakers.
by the normal metric, failure up until probably 5 years ago when we started building our own house. And so this thing of like it will come the financial, I guess, security to some degree. You know, it's just a longer road to get there, but it's a lot more enjoyable. You know, it's a lot more rewarding, I guess, when you do get there in the end. Not that everything's cushy or anything like that at all, but we couldn't afford to buy our house, you know, but we can build it. I can't afford to buy my boots, but I can make them, you know.
Isn't that the sort of the big thing with a lot of makers? They couldn't afford their own
their
gear.
own thing, yeah. And there's a lot of makers, you know, like that trade with each other because I'm really interested in that thing. But like, and this is the conversation we had.
Something at our house that Glenn, the chair maker, made for us.
Okay.
In contra for one of our bags.
A bag, yeah.
It was quite a nice.
It's a nice thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking about this. So Chris's brother, my brother-in-law, is an architect, and he was helping us build the house. And you know, architects and building, for some reason, are somewhat divorced. It seems. Not sure why that is the case, but
He was having us build it. He didn't have the time to help us with the design.
yeah. No, I'm just saying that a lot of architects don't actually get the opportunity to get their hands dirty, and so getting your hands dirty and working out how the materials work is pretty important. I think, but I'm a maker, so of course I'd think that. But you know, the sheer fact of us building our own house. I mean, it's unique in our situation because we make things to create money, you know. But consider the mathematical equation of us actually paying somebody to build our house. And so, in Australia, building is very expensive. It probably would have cost us at the time 2 years ago something like $1 million to pay someone to build our house. Yeah. I've then got to go from the place that I live at the time, which is in the shed of the property, to this workshop and make something like $4 or $5 million worth of shoes in order to pay that person to build our house.
400 million? No.
4 or 5 million dollars worth of shoes to pay somebody to build our house for $1 million. Or I could just not do all of that and build the house myself and spend a third or less of the price of the $1 million. And so consequently there's there's, you know, however many, I can't even do the maths in my brain, but imagine how many shoes I'm making to make $5 million worth of shoes. It's a whole heap of shoes. So, you know, from an economics perspective, it would have been way better to stimulate the economy by doing that, right? But like consumption and divorce from the things that we consume and the things that we, you know, not being able to make the things that we consume, you know, all of that complexity just means that there's a lot more consumption required. You know, people used to build their own houses, people used to grow their own vegetables, people used to, and now everything's outsourced, and so consequently, there's a lot more stuff happening.
Yeah.
You know, to make the fundamental thing of what we need actually come to be. You know.
Then there's, especially in the case of building a house, there's always the argument of you'll do a better job because it's yours.
Yeah, of course.
You might not have the skills, but you'll put the time into having the skills because it's yours.
Yeah.
Plus, you know where stuff is, so you don't have to pay someone to come back and fix it.
Yeah,
Plus, you make all the little decisions, like when I replumbed ours and rewired ours, there was a load of little decisions that I was like, these aren't normal. Like, you wouldn't put like I put a load of valves everywhere so I could isolate loads of different bits. But like, you're going to do that because you come back to it. You need to do it. You don't want to do X, Y, and Z. And you know the reason they don't put them in is because it's an extra X amount per. Yeah. You do things in a more complex way that is costlier for a tradie to come and do it.
Yeah,
but you're doing it yourself, so you're like, well, I just want it to be right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is possibly a curse as someone who can make things because you want everything to be right in your head, right? Whether it's right on paper or whether it's right in your head, and it ends up costing or taking a wild amount of time, right?
Yeah. And you're probably hypercritical of all of those things too. You know, like I'm definitely guilty of that. You know, of looking at things that I've made and thinking,
How do you overcome that, or is that something you guys have to bounce off each other?
I don't think you can you?
I think you can.
You just have to come to terms. You just have to be okay with it. Yeah. You're always like, I mean, well, you know, to my point earlier, as soon as you stop thinking that, I think you stop growing as a maker. You know, like as soon as you look at the thing that you've made and you think, yeah, that's the thing, that's me done. You know, I'm not going to get any better than that.
No, I think there's a level between like it's not going to get any better than that. Then that's more than good enough.
Oh yeah,
but you can still see area to make it better.
Yeah.
The one that we come up against a lot, speaking to people, certainly smaller makers that are just starting out and the confidence is shot because they're, and that's the worrying one, right? Because then they never get off the ground.
Sure.
Their confidence is shot by, it's not good enough. And it's definitely good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's a really fine line between overconfidence and underconfidence, you know, of like being able to recognise that your stuff's is more than good enough, as you say, and being able to recognise that your stuff isn't good enough, like legitimately, you know. I don't know the answer to that. I think ultimately you just have to find the spot in yourself where you think this is me, you know, like, that's the hard part, isn't it? You know, as a maker, and this is, you know, to the point before with Krys being the gatekeeper. It's really, you know, like it's very important, I think, for makers who are of that ilk of you know, knowing what they don't know. If you are the person that decides the price and talks to the customer, and you know, you're always going to undervalue the thing that you've made because you can see the flaws in it. Yep. Whereas if you've got a person that's just like, no, that's awesome, you know, I don't know, I can't see the flaws. What are you talking about? The customer can't see the flaws. What are you talking about? This is it. This is how much they're paying. All right, you know, and so I think that is a really necessary, like for me especially, that was very necessary. You know, that was probably the difference between consistently undercharging for things and being okay with just being like, yep, all right, you know, if the customer's good with it and you're good with it, and I mean, not that we're putting subpar work out, don't get me wrong, it's just that thing of constantly undervaluing yourself, you know? Yeah. And having somebody be like, no, what are you talking about? That's
the best thing ever.
But yeah, exactly. This is amazing. Yeah.
So what's next?
After this, or this. So
Just trying to swim above water.
yeah. Keep paddling. No,
Keep on swimming.
I guess my continuous drive in the shoemaking sphere is that there's basically a monopoly in Australia as far as there's one manufacturer that makes welted shoes, and they make a lot of welted shoes, like 500,000 or more pairs a year. And then there's an enormous gap between them and us. We're kind of like the next tier. And so in America, you've got Red Wing or Wolverine or whatever, brands that are making probably, millions of pairs a year. And then you've got brands like Nix and Whites and Viberg and Truman. Like there's a lot. There's probably a half dozen or more that are in that kind of middle tier, and then there's a whole bunch of smaller makers underneath. Yep. So I don't want to be running around with a clipboard. I want to be a shoemaker. So we need to find that balance. But the thing that drives me, I guess, is to continue to grow our ability to get good products in people's hands. Yeah. And whether that means, because at the moment we make, say, 400 pairs a year. If that means we make 500 pairs a year, then that's a win. If that means we make, 600 pairs a year, that's a win. I don't think we want to be making.
I don't want to be managing too many stuff. I like a small team. Again, I like a small business.
I don't want to be managing any stuff.
Sorry, Grace.
No, but what I mean by that is I want a team of people around us. I want to be part of a team. I don't want to be the captain of the team.
Right.
I could be the captain of the team. I don't want to be the coach.
That's what you're good at.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah. I'm
Why
good at
would
making.
you do anything else?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not great at managing people. So that's hard. It's hard to bring people on, upskill them, train them, get them to stay. It's probably been the single biggest difficulty for me, for us.
Because you're such an asshole.
Because I'm an asshole. Yeah, I should stop being. Maybe that's it. I should just stop being an asshole. Sinful. Why didn't I think of that?
You could spend all that time trying to train someone for like a couple of years and they're like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, that's screw one again.
Yeah.
That's hard.
That's
And I
mentally
think
exhausting.
It's really exhausting. I think that's the concern with a lot of makers in that bridge between being a single person operation or a a strictly family operation kind of thing, to actually having employees, is that the complexity of the craft is something that takes a long time to learn. And we could operate in a different way. We could operate in the same way that company that makes 500,000 pairs a year operates, and we could have machine operators, and that would be fine. But who wants to work like that? Who wants to operate that kind of business? Not me. It's not really human. And so the other choice is to bring people on that are really engaged in what we do and look at the broader picture of what we're trying to achieve. And that's a much longer road to getting somebody to be actually financially beneficial to have as part of the team. So yeah, that's an incredibly long-winded answer to a question. I don't even know. Did we answer the question? I don't think we did. What's next? We're gonna make some more stuff, and we're gonna do some more. I'm really interested in doing some more collaborative work with other makers, to bring other people into our space and to get into other people's spaces. So as a maker, often what you end up doing is working in your own little silo, and you never talk to anybody except for perhaps a customer. Yeah. If they're really keen on talking to me, because most of the time they talk to Chris. I'm kind of like the chef out the back of the restaurant, Right. And if you're a really good customer, the song will come out and be like, "Hey, that person just spent $7 million on dinner. How about you go and say hi to them?" You don't have to spend $7 million on dinner. So, I think the thing that's been really awesome about being part of the Lost Trades Fair, and talking to you guys, and listening to your podcast, is that there's other people out there doing the same sort of stuff as we are, making the same silly decisions for the same silly reasons, and that's really reassuring.
Yeah.
And so a way of making that kind of more than just a surface level insight, or occasionally I might speak to somebody is to kind of, you know, do some collaborative work and get inside each other's heads a bit, you know. Yeah.
We've also got wine coming out at the end of the year.
Yeah, there's one.
There's a few.
There's
hands in pies.
yeah, there's a few. Yeah.
Few
Is it going to be
pies.
Wootten wine?
A few pies.
No,
No,
that's-
it's my own wine. But
Is
you know,
this the
just
stuff we've seen a
you're gonna have it for dinner
Yeah, yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
There's camel toe.
I'll
Yeah.
drink wine. I'll try it.
Yeah,
I'll try it, yeah.
give it a go.
You can not drink it, but
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
Well, I'll try it.
I want you to try it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You should.
And I'll be like, yeah, this is the greatest wine I've ever tasted. He'll be like, it's the first wine he's ever tasted.
It's red. It's liquid. It's made from grapes.
Yeah, it's wet.
Yeah, it's I think for me, as long as whatever we're doing has some sort of purpose, serves that greater purpose, then, you know, whatever it is a good time, you know.
That was the idea with the wine. It's like,
Yeah.
we'll make time, like, let's make time for this. Because originally it was like, I don't think we have time. And like, we'll make time for it. It's important to make time for these other things. Yes, it's intense in March when the Lost Trades are on. Then we're picking grapes and then we're we're doing this all at once.
Totally.
And, you know, it's all a bit much.
But it's also really important because has been a big part of your life, and that industry is really well connected. I mean, there's some people you don't want to mix with in that, like, as industries like that.
Yep.
Those guys can go in the bin, and the other guys are a good time, you know. And so
For anyone listening, we've got Grace like crawling under the table to try and get on with her job today.
it's the YouTube channel. Don't ruin the shot. Yeah, I mean, you know, like I think like fundamentally it's like, let's make good, meaningful connections with people, and if the winemaking industry means that we're going to be able to make good, meaningful connections with people, then let's make wine, you know.
Yeah.
Fair.
It's a side.
That's a good reason.
Side project.
Yeah.
Side hustle, as they call it.
Yeah,
Hustle.
because we are hustling. Look at us. I think that's fundamentally kind of what it all boils down to, isn't it? Like, we're humans, all of us, most of us. Some people are questionably, I suppose. And you know, to be human means, like, we just need connection, you know, and that's something that we miss, you know. And we need a place, we need belonging, we need a place to be, we need to know what our place in the world is, all of that sort of stuff, and
those can be multiple different places.
Yeah.
You can have multiple different interests.
totally, yeah.
There's this, I think especially when people like super duper brand their Instagram accounts and stuff, and and I get why you do that. Of course you would, marketing would tell you to do that, do one thing well. I wrote a newsletter at the start of the year about like simplicity sells. If you look at Volkswagen's car offering, they done like a mass exodus because they had loads of in-betweenies.
Yeah, too many.
They just
make the Golf.
Yeah, just
Everyone's buying it.
yeah, Golf and Tiguan.
Yeah,
that's what you
totally.
need, and that's what people are buying.
Yeah.
But my point to that is that it is okay to have other interests as well.
Sure.
Like,
totally.
yeah, you might just want to sell one thing, of course you will, but you don't have to be so on brand that you're like, everything else doesn't matter.
But that's why we've done what we've done in the shop here, because this is like, you know, it makes sense for us to, you know, bridge into like lifestyle things, and so some apparel, because what do you wear with boots? You don't wear them naked, you wear some apparel.
Apparently you might wear socks or
let's
jeans
have
or
some
t-shirts or
jeans.
jumpers.
Let's have some
Yeah.
locally knitted
And
jumpers
it's all locally
and
made,
beanies.
and it's all stuff that we've had a collaborative.
It was kind of scary to
design.
But it was scary to have that conversation, because it's like, oh, we're going to need to invest money into doing this. And now it's just like, you know, it just makes sense that we've got that. And it's sort of nice that there's customers coming on board with it, being like, oh, this is really well made and it's really well priced. Like, yeah, no shit, we're not trying to rip you off.
Yeah. And we got it from the guy that made it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like 3 or 4 sets of hands that get to a retail store and all of a sudden it's $700 for a jumper.
Yeah.
Or it's the other way around, where it's a really, really reasonably priced jumper going through 3 or 4 sets of hands, and actually the person who made it is making nothing.
No money. Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, I think exactly, that's it. You know, and look, I don't know. Our business, like the shoemaking business, is insanely complicated, you know, so communicating that is very difficult. And then we add like 7,000 layers of different, more complicated stuff on top. And our Instagram's a dog's breakfast from that marketing person's perspective, you know, like the message is insanely complicated. But, you know, how boring would it be to just be like, we make that style of boot. It's in brown and black.
Yeah.
There's the same picture again.
I hear that.
Yeah. So like, let's engage with people on a more meaningful level, hopefully, and that's part, like you were saying, with tours we were running on the weekend, that's all part of it. Like, makes no sense really to spend a whole day just having a yarn with people, but it serves the greater purpose of giving people insight into what we do.
And you said, hopefully, those 80 people are now advocates for what we do.
Yeah, none of them may buy something, but they may
tell someone to buy something.
Yeah, exactly.
And I saw someone actually make shoes.
Yeah.
You should check them out.
You should check them out. Yeah.
Or the worrying one is, did you know there's people that make... yes, I did. Like, of course there has to be. That's a crazy conversation that happens. Like, did you know that someone actually makes these things? They have to.
Yeah.
Like, what other option is there?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not the norm.
But Quincy's learned that pretty young, which is
Yeah, it's so nice.
She's got this, crazy understanding that we make things,
Yeah,
and
she often
things
says, Papa
are
will fix
made.
it. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Here we're walking up the stairs. She goes, Mom and Dad made these stairs.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, because
she
they're
really?
the best.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
She did. There was a creaky one and she like stepped on it. She did. I was like, that's a bit creaky, Quincy. She's like, yeah, my mum and dad made that.
Yeah.
She wasn't at all.
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. That's it, isn't it? That, like, her view of the world is exactly the reason why we're here.
That's cool.
Everyone needs to have that same view.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't it just be the norm? Shouldn't it be the norm that you're like, somebody made this, how is it 3 cents?
I think I might hire her as a podcast host because I've never been asked why on so many different levels.
And it's helpful in the interview.
It was, exactly. But it was like, I said, oh, I'm going to the toilet. Why? I was like, because I drank a lot of water. Why? To be hydrated. Why? Because the body needs it. And they're like, oh God, we're going quite deep
Because I'm
here.
made out of a lot of water, and if I don't replenish it, totally. Yeah, it's fun.
It is a lot of fun. So a question was presented to us yesterday, and you're going to get a chance to leave us with a question as well.
Okay.
Question was presented to us yesterday. Krys, you're going to answer it first. If you could make one thing or one piece of your work that was still around in 100 years that exemplified you, what would it be?
Me personally, not the business.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
It can be you personally, yeah.
It'd be a red boot.
It'd be a red boot.
Red is my favourite colour.
Oh, nice. I'm loving red boots at the moment because I feel like I could just wear them with anything and everyone would think they look amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
It'd be like, oh, those boots belong to that rock star. Wasn't she a rock star, that Christina? Yeah. She was amazing. Yeah.
The red boot.
Just
Any red boot.
Well, if the 100 years exemplified me, it's a very good question.
I don't know where you're going to take this.
I just made a pair of pull-on boots that are based off a pair of boots that my dad made for a friend of ours 45 years ago. And it seems strange to say that I literally made this 2 weeks ago or something for the thing that you're here for.
Was that the part engineer, part cowboy boot?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that, not because it necessarily exemplifies the work, but because it's got a meaning, a lineage meaning for me.
Right, okay.
So
It's like, that's your dad's interpretation. This is your interpretation.
yeah, and even just down to things like, so Dad had a motif that he quite often used on boots, and it is a figure 8 or an infinity symbol. He'd stitched pull tabs and stuff on in that manner, and so I reinterpreted it to be similar manner, but it's more hourglass shape. And I think that means something fairly profound to me, which seems a bit stupid, I suppose. But I think I've lived my entire life because Dad passed away when I was 7, and I just saw how short life can be. Like, there's no time, He was 40, just turned 40. I've just turned 40. And it was that was a bit of a weird thing to be like, now I'm older than my dad ever was. That's weird. So I think, for me that boot means a lot on those levels of like, absolutely take your time and and deep dive into all the things you want to do, and don't be hasty, but realize that time's precious, and it's fleeting. Like it just feels like there's so much to do, and so I guess that little thing kind of symbolizes that for me. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people. I got a lot of mates that are always like, "Oh, you're always at work," and "Oh, you're always busy." It's like, there's a lot to do.
Yeah, there is a lot to do.
I'm not here to fuck around.
I really struggle with that, like, you work too much mentality.
Yeah.
I really struggle with it.
I think it's a really interesting one, and it's probably something that a lot of makers get pushback on. That you used to be the guy that had that job, and you just kind of hang out at the pub with us on the weekend. And what happened to you? You're now a workaholic. No. So the thing that we've kind of started saying to ourselves is that we don't have a job, we have a purpose.
Yeah.
And whatever that purpose is, whatever guise that purpose takes, as long as we're true to that purpose, then it doesn't matter if you're working in inverted commas 7 days a week, because it's meaningful what you're doing. Like if on my day off I'm sitting down and talking to you guys, I guess most people would think that's work, because we're kind of effectively having a work meeting, right? But what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
This
becomes your everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Exactly. You've got to and that's that really fundamental thing of finding what it is that means something a lot. Means something to you, and pursuing
how
it.
does someone relax? Well, try something different. Like
Yeah.
make something different.
Make something
or
different.
whatever.
Totally.
We do gardening. You'll see when
Yeah.
we do gardening.
Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same. It's all wound up in the same thing.
Yeah,
And my mum had, I think my dad had the same issue. He was always he was very driven to get stuff to happen. And my mum's, I guess, seeing him, whatever. Anyway, so my mum's always been kind of concerned. Oh, you're working too much. She just said it to me for a long time. And working, landscaping, building a house, whatever, all of these things, they're all physical work, aren't they? But they're all purpose driven, like we're trying to create something, trying to leave
And if you
the
always
world
say,
better than it was when we got here, that's kind of the thing.
and if you always say, "Oh, there's no time for that because we're too busy with this," then that other thing just doesn't happen. So that's why you push.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, meaningful relationships. Probably the most meaningful relationships I've had in my life have been through having a common purpose.
Yeah.
Like just hanging out and watching the telly.
Yeah. You can have a 30-second conversation about a really good show that you watched this one time.
Yeah.
It's not really you couldn't do a couple hour podcast on it, could you?
No, probably not.
So, what's that say? Yeah, I know that. That's fine. Sorry. Podcast came in. So if you got to sit down with any maker,
Yep.
whoever our next maker is, or whoever our future 100, 200, 300 podcasts are, 1,000 podcasts are.
Yeah, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your lives, right? You guys,
Hopefully.
you guys
That's the
early
hope.
30s?
That is genuinely the hope.
You got another 400. You got another 50 years of this.
Yeah, I know. It's worrying, isn't it?
Yeah.
What question would you ask them? I don't need a why. Just what question would you ask them?
Just probably has a more profound question.
What question would I ask any other maker?
What question have you always wondered?
That's a really difficult question to
Yeah.
answer.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I suppose I'm trying to think of another maker and what I would ask them. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
But I'm trying to make it universal at the same time.
I think I would. I mean, aside from like I meet a maker that's specifically doing a skill that I'm interested in knowing about, like what is this technique? Mm-hmm. I think broadly speaking, the question I would ask them is, are you happy?
Yeah, do you enjoy what you do?
Like deep down,
You would hope so.
are you actually doing the thing that you really are passionate about? And are you compromising? Like what would you do differently if there weren't any constraints on you?
What would you do differently if there weren't any constraints on you?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's
Solid.
That's solid.
Solid.
Take that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like forget about all the societal pressures, all of the status symbols, all of the income, all of that stuff. What would you be doing?
Maybe mine's like, what wine best describes your work?
Oh, that's a good one.
And then
Can
I'm
we
like, I don't
expand
know,
it?
I just drink. I
don't drink wine.
Can we expand it out to what beverage best describes your look?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
well, wine. There's so much story in wine and so many options. So anyway,
Well, you're
don't
a
have to
wine.
go
You're
there.
a wine.
No,
buff.
we can use that one.
Yeah.
So I'm working on something. I don't know what form it's going to take, but we're working on something in the background.
We already
Oh, yeah.
told Brian yesterday. So
Told Brad. I don't think I said it on podcast, did I?
yeah.
I might have someone more. Yeah. So I think the form it's going to take is a deck of cards.
No.
Oh yes, you
With
mentioned this to
like
me.
really the questions that makers
mention
would
this,
ask
yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
or other makers.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something in that we can probably do a lot of the education to ourselves if we know what the questions are to ask.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Like from an engineering background, if you know what the questions are to ask, you can solve anything.
Yeah.
If you don't know what the questions are, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, we not just makers, everybody in most societies, are driven by doing the right thing or the best thing or whatever some other person's expectations are, and I guess that's fundamentally get to the root of who what makes you tick and why you're doing it. I think we've all got to reflect on that. I think it's pretty important.
Every so often ask ourselves questions.
Yeah. Come up for air for sure, and just and take a step back and think. Actually, am I doing? Is this the right thing that I'm doing? Yeah. Do I really want to be making 700 pairs of boots a year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kate, final question.
Yeah. What advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I like this one. So, I've heard you ask this question before. So, I think, and other people have answered it in a similar manner. So, trust the process. And what do I mean by that? I think Ben said this on his podcast a couple of times. Ben Garsler. There is no actually useful piece of information that I could give myself just verbally as a younger human, because all of the shortcomings I had as a younger human were just skill-based, like learned experience and skill-based. As in, I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to make a shoe. I don't know how to, all of those things that you have to gain over time. Yeah. There's two kind of driving mantras, I suppose, that have been with me since I was a very young person, and it's to do with Dad being sick and having passed away. There's a cartoonist in Australia. His name's Michael Leunig. We've got 1,000 of his things on the wall at home. You see them. But there was a cartoon that he drew in probably the 80s, I would guess. And it's a picture of a person walking, and something's coming out of their head, and it's falling in front of them, and it's creating the path that they're walking on. And the line is, let it out, let it go, let it all unravel, let it free so it can be a path on which to travel. And that kind of mantra has always stuck with me, of like, just be yourself and follow the path that is in front of you, don't try and be somebody else, and listen to yourself, And then the other is that Aussie Bissell song, which is pretty funny. So it was something that happened. They're like a African psychedelic band.
We sang it at our wedding.
Yeah, it was sung at our wedding, and so the song's called Woyaya, and it's, to my knowledge, that's kind of an African kind of
mantra
saying that means we are. So I'm not religious, so this is to say heaven or God is a bit weird, but the essence of it is still valid. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and then we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will, and it will be hard. The road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. So that kind of mantra of just
kind of
like
what we've gone
just keep
Yeah.
going and trust the process.
I like that.
It's there's no other way of doing it. You know, there's no fast track.
No, there's certainly.
You've just got to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to be hard. Always, life's hard.
Yeah. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm very I say that a lot. Like everything you do is hard. Just choose your hard.
Yeah.
I'm also acutely aware and acutely okay with it being hard.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be easy.
No.
We could do you would hope it would be easier, but there's a lot of worth in the fact that it's not easy, and I'm very okay with that.
Well, I think if it was, I mean, you know, it's a cliche. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. You know, hard things are worth doing because they mean something at the end. You know,
Yeah.
and if you don't push yourself, if you don't choose the hard route, then I don't know, knowledge is kind of hard won is something that sticks with you, isn't it? And I don't know. Would be nice if it was easier though.
Sometimes, yes. Give me a little something.
Yeah.
Chris, same question.
Mine is the same essence of Jess's, especially the Michael Lenig one, because I did, you know, I'm thinking I was always one to just follow my own path, you know, so just people would expect me to do this, and then all of a sudden I change course and they're like, but why are you doing this? I'm like, well, it's just to get me to this. And then, you know, so it's just cumulatively have fun, you know, because I was like a bit of a book nerd, but like don't always go with the theory, also just feel it. So I probably didn't, you know, that took me a long time in winemaking, especially because it's like, but I know the theory. It's like, and then I had like a loose boss who was like, you don't need the theory. You just got to feel it. You got to flow with it. You know? So I think
Was he Italian?
No, he's New Zealander.
Yeah.
That would be so much better if he was Italian.
He's totally
But, you know,
crazy.
it's just that thing of like, you know, just sometimes,
Love it.
again, trust the process, have fun with it, let your instincts guide you. So it's more about, I think, the instincts rather than the theory necessarily. That would probably help me more, but I did have fun with it.
I gotta say that as far as like working with your partner is concerned, you know, there's the gatekeeper thing, and there's this you're good at this thing and I'm good at that thing, and that is complementary and so on. The biggest upside to Chris and I working together, I think, is exactly what you just said. Then is to have fun with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am super hard on myself, and so consequently, then that kind of rubs off on Chris. You know, but normally when it's like this isn't good enough, it's more because I'm pissed off with myself than I am with you, or you know, like I've got really high standards of my own, you know, on myself, and so I'm kind of frustrated, and then it comes out on you. Sorry about that. But
Sounds similar.
yeah, I think we've got we have this really strange, and like it's such a fantastic ability to just take the piss out of each other and the situation, you know, and we don't take ourselves all that seriously as far as like I was saying before, you know, we're not rock stars, we're not highfalutin craftspeople. I think way too much about all the reasons why I do what I do, and I'm really hard on myself for not making it perfect every time. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I'm just a dude that likes to make stuff, and I'm not. I don't think I'm that great. You know, like you know, I enjoy having a laugh. You know, and so totally, yeah, have fun with it.
It's a nice way to make a living, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just sounded
Yeah, it
lame
is.
when I said in my head, just have fun. Just have fun, Chris.
Yeah, it's so simple.
Just do it, have fun.
But don't lose sight of that. You know, like if you are,
Don't take it too seriously all the time.
don't take it too seriously all the time.
Because
For
you'll
sure.
actually miss the essence of what you're... I think that was the thing. I would be focused too much on theory, and I would just miss the essence of what you're probably meant to learn by osmosis if you're paying attention.
And it's that thing of like when we were talking about at the very beginning, you know, if you're talking about somebody taking this on as a full-time thing, it's very easy to go from, this is really enjoyable, I do it in my shed, there's no strings, like I'm just having a great time, it's my hobby.
I'm loving experimenting.
Yeah, to, I need to make money out of this, shit, I can't pay the rent, you know, whatever it might be, all those pressures, and then you lose the fun of it.
Yep.
And immediately it becomes drudgery. Mm-hmm. So you have to be like full of one. Like you need to imagine you're a 3-year-old and live your life like that.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be absolutely great.
Like just everything's full of wonder. There's whimsy everywhere. Like you can just imagine yourself into a different world immediately. You know, like this is
So
kind
nice when she does that.
of, yeah. I think this is kind of the way we need to approach our lives. Perhaps, you know, don't ask the incessant why to everybody because you might get punched.
It's actually a really good question. I think more people could do with someone just, especially in business, right?
Yeah,
Especially
yeah.
in marketing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Why?
keep asking yourself why.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Just phone Quince every time I need to run on my Facebook ad.
Can you ask me, what was that question you asked me?
Whenever you...
Yeah, I'm going to do that the next day. I'm on a call with Facebook ads people or something like, why? Why? Why?
Yeah,
was that?
that's right. Whenever you find yourself in a hole, just start asking why.
So very quickly to wrap it up,
Yeah.
look down the barrel of the camera, introduce yourselves. And who you are.
Hi, I'm Krys from Wootten.
I am Jess, also from Wootten.
And your Bootmakers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah, we are bootmakers in Australia.
in Australia.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, guys. Let's
Yeah, come and say hi. We can show you around.
wrap it up at that, eh?
Yeah, thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for being interested.
True.
I thought he was going to say thank you for being interesting.